Ignored by your adult children? Stay calm and do this to earn their respect back. There's a quiet ache that many parents feel in their later years, one that doesn't come from physical pain, but from the silence of a phone that doesn't ring, the unanswered messages, or the way your words seem to float through the room, unacknowledged. For people like Margaret, a 71-year-old retired teacher in Asheville, North Carolina, this ache became more familiar after her children grew up, moved away, and began building lives of their own. Once the heartbeat of her home, she now found herself questioning why her kindness and sacrifices were met with distance, or worse, indifference. If you've ever felt like your children no longer see or hear you the way they used to, or if their words come laced with impatience, dismissal, or disrespect, you are not alone. But here's what's more important. This is not the end of your story as a parent. You are still the anchor of your family, the thread that ties generations together. And while the relationship may feel frayed at times, it can still be rewoven with strength, wisdom, and grace. This article offers a compassionate, six-step approach to help you navigate the storm of feeling ignored or disrespected by your children. It's not about demanding respect. It's about earning it in a new season of life. By modeling emotional strength, setting loving boundaries, and inviting healing where disconnection has settled. Along the way, you'll find not just strategies, but hope, renewal, and dignity. Let's begin. 1. Lead with calm. Your emotional strength is the foundation. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Walter, a 68-year-old retired mechanic from Kansas City, sat quietly on his porch. His daughter Megan had just left after another short, tense visit, her tone sharp, her phone in hand the entire time. He hadn't even finished his sentence before she sighed and said, "Dad, I don't have time for this." As the screen door clicked shut, Walter felt the familiar sting of being dismissed. Not for the first time, he felt disrespected and invisible. The instinct, of course, was to lash out, to demand respect, to remind her of the years he spent working double shifts to pay for her braces and school books. But instead, he closed his eyes, placed his hand over his chest, and took a deep breath. In moments like these, your ability to remain calm is not weakness. It's wisdom in action. Responding with fire only creates more flames. But stillness, that's power. It's grace. It's showing your child what strength truly looks like. Not in force, but in composure. Children, even adult ones, are watching more than listening. When they see you hold your ground with gentleness, it teaches them something they can't learn from lectures. Respect is earned through self-respect. That pause, that choice not to yell, becomes a mirror reflecting their own behavior. Over time, that image may begin to shift how they see you, not as someone to argue with, but someone to admire. Walter didn't bring up the argument that evening. He let the dust settle. But the next week, Megan called. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what I said to you." That one moment of calm created space for her to reflect. So the next time you're met with sharp words or silence, breathe. Take a step back. Choose grace. Because calmness is your legacy, one that will outlive even the harshest words. 2. Show empathy without surrendering your role. In the small coastal town of Rockport, Maine, lives Eleanor, 73 years old, once a nurse, always a mother. Her son Jason had recently been under stress. Between work, raising 2 teenagers, and managing a mortgage, he rarely called. And when he did, he often sounded distant or even irritable. One day, when she gently asked why he hadn't visited in weeks, he snapped, "Mom, you just don't get it." Her heart sank, not from the words alone, but from the distance she felt growing. Still, Eleanor didn't respond with guilt or anger. Instead, she paused. She remembered what it felt like to be young, overwhelmed, trying to juggle life while not realizing how her silence might be hurting someone she loved. And so, she replied softly, "You're right. I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I'd like to understand. This is what empathy without surrender looks like. It's not agreeing with disrespect. It's not shrinking into silence. It's choosing to look beyond the surface behavior to see the worry, the exhaustion, the pain your child might not have the tools to express. You don't excuse the behavior, but you acknowledge the struggle behind it, and in doing so, you plant a seed of understanding. That seed may take time to grow, but it roots in trust. Your child begins to realize they're not being scolded or shamed. They're being seen. And often that's all anyone really wants. When Eleanor later received a message from Jason that simply read, "Sorry for snapping. I miss you," she knew her calm empathy had opened a door no argument ever could. So when your child's words sting, don't give up your ground, but do offer your heart. See their hurt, even if it's poorly expressed. Because when you respond with empathy, you don't lose authority. You earn their respect in a deeper, lasting way. 3. Set boundaries that are calm, clear, and compassionate. In the quiet neighborhood of Temecula, California, Harold, a 76-year-old widower, had been noticing a troubling pattern. His grown son, Greg, had developed a habit of speaking harshly during their weekly phone calls, cutting him off mid-sentence, brushing off his concerns, and sometimes even hanging up without a proper goodbye. After one particularly cold exchange, Harold sat at his kitchen table, staring at the receiver in silence. He knew he had a choice: let the behavior continue and stew in resentment, or gently but firmly set a boundary that protected his own emotional well-being. The next call, Harold calmly said, "Greg, I love our talks, but I need us to speak with more respect. If we can't, I'll need to take a break from our calls until we're both ready." Setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about self-respect and mutual growth. It's saying, this is how I deserve to be treated, and this is what I will no longer allow. And here's the secret many forget. Boundaries create safety, not distance. When set with kindness, they show your child that relationships can have expectations without ultimatums. They model the kind of strength that says, I will not raise my voice, but I will raise the standard. Harold didn't shout. He didn't guilt. He just stayed calm and consistent. And 2 weeks later, Greg called, apologetic and changed. "You were right, Dad," he said. "I didn't realize how I was sounding. Can we start fresh?" If you set boundaries in anger, they become walls. But if you set them with love, they become doors. Doors that lead to a more respectful, peaceful relationship. You don't need to fight to be heard. You just need to speak with steady conviction and let your silence hold the rest. 4. Be the example you wish they'd follow. In Savannah, Georgia, lives Dolores, a 70-year-old former librarian known for her quiet grace and deep wisdom. Over the years, she had grown disheartened watching her daughter Lisa speak to her with clipped remarks and an air of impatience, especially in public or around the grandchildren. It was easy to feel hurt, even easier to want to correct Lisa immediately. But Dolores knew something deeper. Children of all ages often repeat what they've seen more than what they've been told. So Dolores made a quiet, firm choice. Instead of snapping back or lecturing, she modeled the respect she longed to receive. She spoke gently, even when Lisa didn't. She listened without interrupting. She remembered birthdays, celebrated small victories, and offered kindness without conditions. And over time, something shifted. Lisa started staying longer during visits. Her tone softened. One day, after watching Dolores patiently explain a board game to her grandson for the 4th time, Lisa paused and said, "I wish I had your patience. I really do." That was the moment Dolores knew. Your example is more powerful than your opinion. When you carry yourself with dignity, consistency, and warmth, You teach without speaking. You remind your children what maturity looks like, not with lectures, but with presence. They may not notice right away, but seeds are being planted in every respectful exchange. Being the example doesn't mean being perfect. It means being intentional. It means showing up as the person you hope they'll one day become, even if they aren't there yet. Dolores never stopped being a parent. She just changed how she parented. And by doing so, she not only protected her peace, she quietly inspired growth in the next generation. 5. Create moments of connection beyond conflict. In the heart of Asheville, North Carolina, lives Walter, a retired mechanic who spent much of his life fixing cars. And now he's trying to repair something far more delicate: the connection with his daughter, Megan. Their conversations had become mostly corrections, reminders about missed calls, forgotten birthdays, or the sharp tone she sometimes used. Walter realized one evening, as he stared at the empty dinner table, that all their recent talks had been built around conflict. What was missing was simple, gentle connection. So he decided to change the rhythm. Instead of calling only when something was wrong, Walter started inviting Megan to join him at the local Saturday farmers market. No big talks, no expectations, just moments. They'd stroll past flower stalls, share fresh lemonade, and slowly, without saying a word, begin mending what had frayed. Connection doesn't always require conversation. Sometimes it lives in the act of showing up, of being present without pressure. The trust you're longing for isn't always built in lectures. It's built in shared laughter, quiet moments, and unspoken understanding. If all you do is correct, your child begins to brace every time you reach out. But when you create joyful, low-stress moments outside of correction, you become safe again. And when you're a safe space, respect can take root. It's never too late to create new memories. Invite them to cook an old family recipe, watch a classic film together, send a handwritten note with a fond memory. These seemingly small gestures can rebuild bridges that feel too far gone. Walter's farmers market visits with Megan didn't fix everything overnight, but they softened the edges, opened the door, and brought back the warmth he feared was lost. Because when love is rekindled through shared presence, healing quietly begins to bloom. 6. Give them space to reflect. Growth takes time. In a quiet lakeside town near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, lived Evelyn, a retired nurse with a heart full of stories and a home once filled with laughter. But lately her youngest son, Brian, had grown distant, pulling away during visits, offering short replies and brushing off her attempts to talk. One afternoon, after he abruptly ended a call, Evelyn sat alone on her porch swing, the silence heavy. Her first instinct was to call him back, to demand an explanation, to fix it immediately. But something inside her whispered, "Wait, let him come to you." So instead of pushing, Evelyn gave Brian what few parents ever find easy to offer: space. No lectures, no guilt, just space, wrapped in love. And in that space, something unexpected happened. 2 weeks later, Brian showed up at her door, holding a small box of her favorite lemon tea. "I've been thinking, Mom," he said quietly, "about us. I haven't been fair to you. You see, reflection doesn't grow in the noise. It blossoms in silence when no one's forcing change. When you release control, you make room for grace. Growth, true, lasting growth, takes time. Not every seed sprouts the day it's planted. Sometimes your child needs to sit with your words, your example, and your calm response before they can recognize what needs to change. And if you keep pushing, you might interrupt a lesson that's still sinking in. Giving space is not giving up. It's saying, "I trust you to find your way, and I'll be here when you do." Evelyn's choice to wait rather than chase taught her son more about love than any words ever could. Because sometimes the most powerful parenting move you can make is to simply let go and let them find their way back home. Final thought. Respect begins with love, grows with patience, and lasts through grace. Parenting doesn't end when our children become adults. It simply changes form. In the later years of life, when we hope for peace and deeper bonds, facing disrespect or distance from our children can be one of the deepest heartaches we carry. But even then, the path forward is not built on anger or control. It's built on love, steady and unwavering. It's built on patience, the kind that doesn't demand quick fixes, but allows space for healing. And above all, it's built on grace, the ability to rise above pain and lead with compassion. When your children ignore you or their tone feels cold, remember, you still have the power to shape the relationship, not by force, but by being the example, by creating connection beyond correction, by showing calm in moments of chaos. These actions speak louder than frustration ever could. No matter your age, your influence never fades. Your love still teaches. Your presence still matters. And now we'd love to hear from you. Have you faced this struggle? What helped you rebuild trust or stay grounded through it? Please share your stories in the comments below. Your wisdom may be exactly what another parent needs to hear today.